Right. Good evening, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education special meeting is now in session. At this time, we wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and lead. The interpreters for tonight are Karen Reyes and Yvette Perez. Thank you for taking the time to join us. This meeting is being interpreted live into Spanish with a delay of a few seconds. We kindly ask that you please pace yourself, pause between ideas, and speak clearly so everyone can follow along. And at this time, we will have a moment of silence. Thank you. Board members, we are now at agenda review and approval.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the items on the consent agenda, line elementary villages, as well as the parking lot asphalt paving for Southwest Elementary, be moved to the end of the agenda after, I guess it would be a new section 4. And it would be operations section. Operations A and B.
Okay. So is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved that consent items A and B be turned into facilities or operations, and that come on the agenda after administration, after number 3. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. It's approved unanimously. We need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
It's been moved by Ms. Rogers and seconded by Mr. Kaysen to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I vote aye. It's approved unanimously. So now we are moving on to, since there are no consent agenda items to approve, we're going to go straight into our 2026-27 DPS salary scales. Mr. Teeter, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Harold Goff, board members, and Dr. Lewis. So just to kind of prepare for some basic housekeeping of some things that we'll do this evening for the purpose of this presentation, and to also make sure that we, for the questions that we've already addressed in writing, we want to make sure that we do some things throughout the course of the meeting as well to address those. And so Mr. Barfield, Assistant Finance Officer, has joined us, and then there will be points in the presentation where he will share his screen for you and the public as we work through an interactive tool that will show some inputs and outputs. And so we're leaning in hard on the transparency so that folks can see sort of the impacts of Curiosity's real time where a lot of this work is concerned. So thank you, Ruben, for being here with us tonight. Looks like the presentation has been queued up, and so we will, I'm really, for our returning board members, so appreciate your patience as we will kind of scale back and probably provide some history that you already know, and we'll really kind of lean in heavily on explaining some concepts with certified and classified compensation in North Carolina and in Durham in general, just to try to make this as meaningful as possible. And so we can move forward a couple of slides. We call out some actions that are stemming from the state budget. All right, perfect. And so throughout the budget development process for the 26-27 year, we spent quite some time wondering what the state of North Carolina would do. We operated this full school year without a proper state budget in place, and started our 26-27 budget development process without very much information on what the state of North Carolina might do. So a couple of cycles now of having to sort of guess what may or may not happen from North Carolina. After we were quite deep in the process of working with county commissioners on what funding would look like for the school system moving into this year. A framework was leaked from the General Assembly, and it was later confirmed by a press conference the day after of what some of the broader frameworks were going to be in the state budget or surrounding compensation. And so a number of those things ended up coming to pass, right, with that budget request. And we felt it was important, just given the timeline of how that state budget was materializing into late June. We felt it was safe to reserve some time to connect with the board in July to make some efforts to finalize some pay tables so that we can get increases to our employees as soon as possible and not have to operate with retro pay in the month of August. You may have seen some headlines as recently as today or yesterday that the state office of the Controller's Office for the state of North Carolina, who pays state employees that work for state agencies and not school systems, they've made their decision that they're not going to do anything until August, where the pay changes are concerned for your sort of standard state employees. And so we try to strive for better than that. And so this was sort of the latest kind of possible meeting we could have to operationalize the changes in finance and in payroll to make sure these things were in force for the July paychecks that will come forward. We do have two sort of July pay dates that are coming forward. So on July 24th, that will be our first payday for bus drivers and substitute teachers in the district that are paid twice a month. And so those are very easy updates to make. And so we only have to touch a couple of scales to put any kind of changes there in effect. And then July 31st will be sort of payday for other employees who work in the month of July. Most notably for Durham, we have the 9 year-round schools. And so just really keeping those employees sort of front and center where that's concerned. So sort of back to sort of the broader kind of compensation conversation, this has received quite a bit of media coverage in that the average raise for teachers in North Carolina was to be 8% for base pay, with that leaning very heavily towards beginning teachers on the salary scale. So we saw some numbers, and we touch on this a little bit later, but just sort of those beginning numbers being a 17% increase, and then seeing increases closer to 5% for more veteran teachers in North Carolina, which is unfortunately sort of consistent with the patterns we have seen when there has been a past budget in the past few years. They do include in that budget a couple of bonus structures. And so where teachers and other certified employees are concerned, meaning folks that have licenses in the district, less than 16 years of experience, a $500 bonus, 16 years of experience or greater, $1,000 bonus. I think just sort of a timid attempt to address sort of the delta with those raises on the scale. And there is sort of new progress that we're waiting on additional information on, but we have time to update later in the year. So shortly after a lot of heated conversations around the Leandro lawsuit about education funding and equal education funding in North Carolina, the General Assembly rolled out a special state supplement for teachers that they refer to as the low wealth supplement. Since the inception of that program, Durham Public Schools has been one of 7 school systems in North Carolina who could not participate in that program because of the tax base in Durham. And this particular budget bill has sort of walked that back to where Durham County is now part of that program. And so we're at this point just awaiting how much money will they give Durham specifically. And once we receive that, We will be required to bring a plan to you as the board of how we roll that out in Durham. But we'll take the dollar amount most likely and sort of walk that backwards into how much can we do per teacher for that bonus program. And I've seen it operationalized in different ways in different districts. Some of them choose to pay that in it just at one time throughout the year. Some do it 2 times. Compared to some of the lower wealth counties in the district, I expect our amount to be not quite as meaningful. Even though we're going to be included this time, but some more lower wealth counties see those supplements range as high as $5,000, and so it's not inconceivable to pay that in a couple of installments. I would imagine that Durham, we will bring you a plan where we pay that out at one time, and possibly do that at a time that's strategic or meaningful for our teachers. So either close to Christmas or the holidays, or close to the beginning of summer, right? And so just some times where that has really an impact for our employees. So more to come on that, and we'll bring you up to speed as soon as we know how much we're receiving from that program. Where our classified employees are concerned, that it includes a minimum 3% raise. So just regardless of any type of decision that we would make here in Durham, we'd be required to comply with that minimum of 3%, regardless of the type of classified employee that's under consideration. Also brought forward some bonuses for them. One extra bonus that was not part of the framework that came out. And so for employees earning less than 65,000, a bonus of 1,750 that would be paid. And then for employees earning greater than 65,000, a $1,000 bonus. The third piece we weren't expecting, and a little context with that one. And so, as you know, we've had private vouchers or the Opportunity Scholarship Program in place in North Carolina for a couple of years now. And the agreement was that the difference between the money that we would have received for those students enrolled in public school versus what was actually paid out in the opportunity scholarships for those, the delta of that was to come back to public schools for us to spend on students. It took a couple of years for that to materialize, likely because there hadn't been a budget for them to achieve that. There were a number of curricular related investments that the state was making with those funds, but then also funding an additional bonus that was intended for custodial and school nutrition employees in school systems for $1,750. All of these categories, we are likely to pay those out at some point in September or October. There are some that have to be paid out by the middle of October and some by the end of October. And so most likely my team will work to process those in September, just to make sure that we're in compliance and that we don't cut close to those deadlines in October, because some of them are a little bit different. On the next slide, just in terms of any time that we build a budget request in Durham or any school system, right, we contemplate the potential impact on our locally funded employees with state action. And so without having knowledge of what the state was going to do when we begin our budget process very early on, we sort of played it safe and planned on 5% for both categories of employees, and know there are 115 public school systems in North Carolina, and you would not find a consistent approach in this budget cycle. And you've seen many probably frantic headlines from other school systems that budgeted for lower numbers than this, trying to figure out how they're going to make things work, and coming back to their county commissioners to seek additional funding in order to shore up what they were not expecting to happen. And so with all that said, with those 5% increases, and we took a deep dive into our locally funded employees and the nature of our locally funded employees. And so 80% of our locally funded employees in Durham are classified, and those sort of aired on the lower side of the state raises in that state budget. 20% are certified, and they were at an average of step 6 on the teacher salary schedule. And in that state salary schedule, that lines up with an increase of 9.4%. And so number of school systems in the state are wrestling with most of their average locally funded teacher is on step 0, 1, or 2, which were closer to 17 to 15% raises. And so it was a much greater challenge in order for them to navigate that. When we blend all those variables together, so the average impact for our locally funded employees because of the state budget was 4.28. So we came in a little under the 5, and full transparency and full honesty, right? We were in the lucky quadrant on that, right? Just in terms of where that goes. And so it could have gone the wrong way if our crystal ball gave us a different inclination on what the state might do. And so that's a very, very frustrating aspect, right, of this work, of waiting on the state. The retirement rate, we came in with an assumption of 25.67. That was ahead all the way up to the moment that we saw the final budget bill. That was going to be the prevailing number. So final technical correction from the state treasurer's office in tandem with legislators to make that 26.1. Health insurance, we came in estimating 9,100, and that came in at 8,925 per employee that we contribute into the state health plan. We can progress a couple of more slides from there. And so on June the 8th, our county commissioners ultimately sort of authorized what they were going to do for us, sort of above and beyond what we had been receiving in the 25-26 cycle. So they did allocate to us just shy of $10.9 million for continuation costs. And when we talk about those continuation costs with them, we refer to some of those state impacts with salary and benefits that we saw on the previous slide. We had to very seriously contemplate with them potential impacts from our energy providers and our other utility providers and those growing costs and equal uncertainty in that space. We only had to operate with what Duke Energy might do. And there's been a lot of back and forth with the Attorney General and the utilities at this point, and seems like things might pan out a little better there, but we won't know until we know when the Utilities Commission sort of makes their final rendering on that. We look at other things like, increases to insurances, so property insurance, auto insurance, all the things that you think about sort of in your personal lives, but at a much greater scale with the number of facilities that we operate. In the expansion arena, and so when we talk about that, we're talking about new things that we have asked them for. Trash can was in my way. And so obviously a major focus sort of that expansion request was compensation for our classified employees, right? That came through just many, many rounds of input and feedback and public comments in this room and engagement in the meet and confer process. Classified pay came through just undisputably the number one priority. And so there was a commitment of $2,650,000 in expansion funds to go towards that effort, with the desire for us to match that within our own operating budget, and to assure that the minimum wage would be at least $18.22 an hour, which is $1 less per hour than we were reaching for with our request. And then we also received $1 million of additional capital outlay funding, which is it's a separate request. It's a separate set of funding to support some of the efforts that are coming forward with refreshing technology in the district. So in the next slide, we just tie together a couple of other items where compensation is concerned, and that's really sort of driving the work that Mr. Barfield and I did with the development of some other materials. So as a part of our continuation request, $2.2 million of that request, right, was related to anticipated increases to classified pay. And we were very careful in our request process to the county to not duplicate that in our expansion efforts, and so that they were not double funding something that we were trying to do. From there, we have the additional $2,650,000 from the county, our $2,650,000 match for a $7.5 million effort to have an impact on classified pay. On the next slide, we can move forward two more, in fact. So we just sort of revisit this chart, right, where we sort of contemplate sort of what the minimum increases would be. And we will share on the screen some of these documents, right? We sort of drive some complicated spreadsheets that don't always play nice with PowerPoint or Google. And so there's another document that we've emailed to the board that we'll also share that dives a little bit deeper, right, in terms of what employees can expect, right? And so if we're looking as an example on the NC1 scale that's in that first row, sort of that starting point for that scale moves 9.43%. However, we've developed sort of scales that assure that employees will receive a step increase in tandem with the raise, right? And so our scales are drawn up with the beginning step of 0 for no experience up to 31 plus. And so employees are accustomed to earning a year of or earning additional pay as they work sort of through that scale. That was not something that we did in the year that just closed due to the uncertainty around state budgets, right? And so that's something that's been frustrating for our employees, that on the heels of what occurred with the last salary study and its administration, and then really them sitting idle for this past year, right? We heard lots of feedback from them in this, and it was important to us as we developed this, that there was some monetary value with them progressing sort of to their next year of experience on the salary schedule. And so as I'm talking, I'll have Ruben kind of queue up the spreadsheet that shows what folks can expect, right? And so just to let you see sort of an example as folks kind of work along those steps of the scale. And I'm going to talk about an important point on the next slide while Ruben is working to queue all of that up for the screen share. And so on the next slide, right, this is a space where we had a lot of questions and from the outside, and Ruben and I had a lot of sort of choice words over time as we've sort of unpacked salary schedules that we've inherited that have been touched by 3 different consultants over Durham's history, and just in a lot of occasions dealing with sort of matters that are basic arithmetic and just sort of basic payroll. And so just as we use the NC1 scales as an example, and so our salary schedules in Durham, right, they reflect a monthly wage, they reflect an annual wage, and there's an hourly wage sort of that drives behind that. With the exception of a couple of groups of employees, our employees in Durham are predominantly earning a monthly salary. They have to work a certain number of hours to earn that salary. But they, in most cases, are also governed by the Fair Labor Standards Act in terms of receiving comp time or overtime when they go beyond sort of their standard work hours, but they're receiving sort of a set monthly salary. Our bus drivers and our before and after care assistants are examples of 2 employee groups that are paid an hourly wage versus sort of that predictable monthly salary that's connected to a certain number of hours. So all that said, there was a couple of different ways, the way that the salary scales were constructed in September of 2024, there was a couple of different ways that you could back into what is an hourly rate. And so when you look at looking at the annual wage, you can divide that by 2,080 hours and reach one number. And then unfortunately, the way that the math was constructed in that old scale, it should have worked out to $17.15. Like, I think that was sort of the goal there, that the way that those monthly the way that that monthly calculation occurred, it worked out to more like 1665. And so that, as we did the work to build our own scales and to sort of work through modeling what we wanted to do for the new year, right, we uncovered sort of more and more just sort of those sort of arithmetic issues. I think important to stress that our employees who are salaried were paid the advertised monthly salary. But any inferences that they attempted to make about what that equates to as an hourly wage, they would have gotten frustrated with trying to reach that. And I think I spent some time meeting with a couple of custodians personally, walking them through their pay stubs and trying to unpack that. Are we good? we're going to attempt to share. I see nods. That's great. Have the document that with the grades, like where it should. So the initial thing that pulled up is the calculator that you can work with, and we're going to pull up the other document here. This one's important. Thank you to whoever turned down the air. Thank you for your patience on that. And so with this particular document, this is really sort of part of the guts behind a lot of the work that we did to compute cost. And so I think it's so, and Ruben, I might have you engage your microphone because I can't see that well from here. But if you can just sort of share for a custodian, right, who's on step 0, moving to step 1 on the scale in the new year, like what percentage raise would they see? So 9.97, right, for example, so just shy of 10%, right? So someone that's advancing from no experience as a custodian to step 1, right? And so, and you can see just various degrees of raises based upon people that are sort of working their way along the scale. And so just kind of want to share, just kind of want to reiterate, right, that so these minimum numbers that we're seeing, right, we're just saying that that's the value that the bottom floor of each grade would move. But then a number of employees will see more than that as they progress along their steps. So I think that was just wanted to make sure that we illustrated that, and we can work to make sure that this document's available right to the full district so that they can see that along the way. But from there, I think we can toggle back to the presentation for now, but just wanted to make sure y'all saw that tool. For those employees as well, so our employees that were with us prior to the last study that occurred, they were held harmless in the sense, and so you will hear a number, if you talk to classified employees, you will hear a number of them reference that they have a legacy pay differential on their checks. And so as we sort of did this work, a number of them had questions about all of this is great. What happens to my legacy differential, right? And so for ease of administration, for the legacy differentials, those will move right at the percentage that's identified for the respective pay grade. So if I'm a NC1 and I have a legacy differential, we're going to move that 9.43% for them. And I will share that is just a decade of doing school system payroll. Very uncommon for us to move a hold harmless. They normally idle and they just stay that same number as time goes on. And so just making that judgment call to let that move to in concert with the other pay. It felt like for me, with everything that occurred and the reason that differential exists, it seemed smart in a Durham to let that move along with the salary scale. And so we will, in the process of what we're doing to administer this in our system, we'll be updating each of those individual records, right? So we're between 1,200 and 1,300 employees still that are hanging on to those legacy differentials that will feel that impact. On the next slide, we sort of touch on some other scales. This current iteration for administrators that are coordinator or higher, it reflects a 5% versus some of the higher percentages that we see sort of in the lower grades of the scale. Driver's ed represents a 3% movement, right? And so that's not a sort of, we view driver's ed as not a primary employment for our folks, right? We see a lot of our folks that are coming and taking that on as something after school. It's an extra kind of side hustle, so to speak, where driver's ed is concerned. Safety assistants and our bus drivers, I think, are important to lift up just in terms of other things that we've done to affect their compensation that we have not done for other groups of classified employees. And so though we're seeing a 4.05% increase there, we have implemented for bus drivers in this past year a $200 monthly supplement. And so for the average driver, that would have had a value of about $278 per hour, where their pay is concerned. And as a part of this process, for this year ahead, looking to implement the $100 for transportation safety assistance, and then sort of based on the average hours for a typical safety assistant, that would have a value of $1.39 per hour. And so just kind of wanted to touch on those other impact points in juxtaposition to this 4%, and why we just sort of wanted to kind of get credit for that investment and just note what we're doing there for those groups of employees are hoping to do. On the next slide, we sort of revisit, we've lifted this slide up in the 2 June presentations to the board, this sort of captures just sort of the raw dollars sort of per pay grade of investment that would come with the funds, and what share of the funds, right, that means. And so you can see on NC1, for example, I talk about them quite a bit. It's an investment of $965,955. It's a large group of employees. It's also a sizable increase that we're looking to make for that group. And so they're constituting 13.2% of the increase. You'll notice that there's not an NC2 referenced. There is currently no one in Durham Public Schools that's placed on an NC2. NC3, we have 4 employees that live there. And so that's why you'll see just sort of a moderate sort of investment where that's concerned. And it's not reflective of the nature of the raise, but just the number of folks there. NC4, right, healthy representation of employees there, so a little over 500,000. And this is where you predominantly see our school nutrition workers in the cafeterias for that pay grade. As you work up to NC5, sort of a common group that you would see there would be cafeteria managers proper, where that's concerned. NC5IA and NC6IA are, I'll explain sort of those. Feels important for new members. So our instructional assistants work 37.5 hours per week, with the exception of a handful of pre-K ones that have to work a 40-hour week due to our relationship with other pre-K sites in the county. But broadly speaking, a number of our instructional aides are 37.5 hours per week. And so we draft sort of a special schedule for them. So they're earning the rate of pay that comes with an NC5 or 6 respectively, but then the monthly and annual salaries that we reflect on those scales capture that they work 37.5 hours per week. So just wanted to sort of address that, because I'm sure that might have been a wonder about of why are those there and what does that mean. And you will see from there, as you NC6 proper, you'll see sort of a number of clerical based or paraprofessional. They supported our schools, elementary, middle school bookkeepers, data managers, receptionists of sorts, sort of live in that space. NC7, you're starting to push a little more into high school paraprofessional support, high school bookkeeper, high school data manager, things of that nature. NC8 and beyond, right, you're starting to see sort of an uptick sort of in the technical nature of the work. And so you also start to see those numbers sort of dwindle in terms of the volume. They're not quite as large as employment groups as you start to push into some of those categories. I would say NC8 in a lot of respects, there's a lot of sort of entry level paraprofessional work in the central office that lives there. Just as an example, I'll use our accounts payable department in finance is very commonly an entry point into finance in the school system, right? And so that is a group that's on NC8 for us. And then in the school space, if you hear conversation about restorative practices coordinators, right, those are folks that live sort of on that NC8 scale, and so they're differentiated a little bit more sort of than sort of a conventional instructional assistant. So just to kind of give you a sort of a brief tour, right, of where some things live on these scales. In the right-hand column, I think it's a space where we've sort of heard sort of the greatest degree of input, or those scales that have an MH, right? And so those are sort of the health-related scales. And so MH12 is where we have our occupational therapy assistants in the district. MH17 is where we have nurses who are not paid on a teacher scale due to their licensure, the nature of their licensure. And then an MH18 is the area where we've heard the most feedback, right? And that's where our occupational therapists and our physical therapists sort of live in our salary schedules. And in the presentation a little further on, we make comments right about those employees and what we are attempting to do with them for these scales. So we have restructured the MH18 scale for Durham such that pay matches exactly what we do for psychologists, speech therapists, and audiologists in the district to include right, the base pay and the local supplement, and we just lump that right sort of into one pay amount for that group, sort of to address the concerns that have come forward, and we believe that makes us competitive with some of our other urban school systems that hire OTs and PTs sort of at a large scale. So just wanted to touch on that very important point. So that feedback has not gone unheard right in the process. And so then you can see the numbers really start to dwindle when you get into administrators. And so there's not really a great end count there or dollar investment with those groups per se. On the next slide, we just sort of touch on some high level sort of bullet points, and I've hit on a number of these while I've rambled through the other slides. But the goal is, to lift that minimum wage to $18.22 or a minimum monthly wage for a full-time person of $3,158.13. I've received some interesting feedback, just sort of as we have had conversations with custodians and people who supervise custodians, that our conversation around talking about a minimum hourly wage is oftentimes confusing as they're getting the monthly salary. And so we're sort of in our vernacular, we're going to try to talk more about the minimum monthly in tandem with that minimum hourly to help make sure that it's less confusing as folks are interpreting things. Work to do, so just finance committee members, so just sort of a preview, right? These are some other things that we may have conversations about sort of in the near future of how we look at some of these things in terms of compensation, just in terms of would it be beneficial for certain groups of our employees to see hourly versus monthly and other little type of increments that we might put in place as we think really hard about the desire to see an increase in pay frequency versus it just being monthly. So just a preview for Finance Committee of some things that we're thinking about and some work that's forthcoming where that's concerned. So again, we talked about this earlier, the employees, in addition to the raise associated with the pay grades, employees would receive their pay step, which would come with additional funding beyond that percentage raise. We do have employees in the district who have been with us a very long time, and they are beyond the years that are on that scale, right? And so you'll see a number of those scales, say 31 plus, sort of as that ultimate step. And on June 30th, when Ruben and I were closing the fiscal year, and we walked out the side door just to go home, we met one of those employees who had just finished an interview, I believe, and had been with us for over 40 years, and sort of stressed the importance of not forgetting where they land in all of this, right? And so where those employees are concerned that are sort of above and beyond that 31 plus mark on the scale, right? We will be working to make sure that they get the sort of the minimum raise that we said we would do for that pay grade. So if they're on a step NC1, they'll get 9.43%, right? And we'll touch their record individually to make sure that that happens. Some of my colleagues would just do the minimum 3% from the state and keep it moving. But we're sort of in this Durham space being very diligent to make sure what we said we're doing for that grade is what we'll do for those folks that kind of go beyond that 30 plus mark on the scale. Just to reiterate, for folks that have legacy differentials, they will get that sort of percentage raise change applied to their legacy pay. And so that's very important here for Durham. We do have a couple of other sort of adjustments. And so aligning payroll technicians to be in line with HR or benefit technicians in the district. So they're doing a lot of work to administer all of these changes and really doing more personalization in the application of our payroll. And so just don't want to lose sight of the incredible lift that they're going to make over the next couple months in this year operationalizing all this. Cafeteria managers, I just had a really great conversation with the director of child nutrition. Just in terms of his frustration from the last salary study of really feeling like he was not heard about what's really smart for child nutrition managers. And to be honest, like I learned something from him about this, even though I've been paying people a long time. But just sort of that natural assumption, right, is that a high school cafeteria manager should make more than an elementary because it's a bigger school and there are more kids and it's more complicated, right? And really sort of challenge us to think about how many meals are they actually serving. And so if you have a high school where maybe half of the students are not participating in the school lunch, you may have a large elementary school in the district that's serving more meals than that high school. And so just trying to lay some framework for new folks coming on board that we give sort of more thought to how many meals are they having to prepare at those locations versus just how big is the school. So more to come on that as that rolls out. So no changes at this point, but just laying that framework to be able to consider that sort of as we move forward. And then again, we talked about this quite a bit, just the alignment of OTs and PTs to match the other related service providers and what they're getting from the state as well as a local supplement in Durham. So that was sort of the last of the slides that we had prepared. There were, I think, just on the presentations, we had one typo in the classified document, and so we needed to update. And so if we take any kind of action this evening, so on the scales that address sort of our before and after care employees, it's a very kind of small chart in there. It lists a 1785 in the first row, and that needs to be an 1822. And so that was just one correction we needed to make to all of these pages of documents. And so just wanted to call that out. And then from there, I think we're prepared to entertain what I know are many questions. And I think some of those questions may need us to engage the tool that we've prepared in finance. And so we have that calculator at the ready if we need to interact with that at all in order to address any questions that the board might have with the scales and implications on the scales.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. First of all, I want to thank Jeremy Rubin and his entire team for bringing this work forward. As soon as we found out we had a state budget, 1,014 days we had to wait on a state budget, yet and still, as you know, districts have had to make responsible decisions to support our scholars and staff without one. And so at our last board meeting, you recall, Jeremy, and he mentioned this earlier, that we wanted to have this meeting so our staff wouldn't have to wait any longer, and do any type of retro pay in August. So I'm so appreciative of his team for bringing this forward this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teeter, Dr. Lewis. Board members, any questions? All right, Mr. Kaysen.
I also want to thank you and your team for putting this together and giving us this bird's eye view. One thing that I'm wondering about, if we can go to the slide that says total investment of classified pay proposal. If I could look at that one real quick. As I'm looking at these numbers, this gives us number of employees and the salary adjustment. It was a chart, total investment of, yeah,
Slide
that's it.
12, yep,
Yeah, that was it.
slide 12. yeah.
Thank you. So as I'm looking at that and thinking of people on these certain grades and so forth, classifications, I'm also wondering about I think the 1,200, 1,300 people who are considered legacy, theirs will be different, or is it baked into this as an average?
So it's baked into these totals.
Okay, that's what I
Yep.
was trying to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Rogers?
Thank you for the presentation. You talked about the tool and you said you were gonna make the tool available for who?
So we have two different documents, and so the tool so the sheet that shows the value of what the raises will be with grade and step, right? We'll make available for anyone to inspect it, who wants to see that. We can do the other tool, I think tentatively making it available to kind of go over in this space if we need it, but we can make that available to other stakeholders if that's the pleasure of the board.
I don't have an opinion about that right now. I have a follow-up question on the first tool
Sure.
that you can make available. Will that come with instructions for each employee to be able to identify where, locate themselves on the schedule and know what verified years of service HR is using for them and what, step they're on?
We can certainly make sure, I'm glad that you asked that. We can certainly make sure that we do that. Those just kind of played out in my head of what those would be in order for them to correctly do that. And I think we'll need to give them some screenshots sort of along the way to make sure that they can do that. But yes, ma'am, we'll make sure that happens.
I wasn't asking for that to happen.
But
I was
it's gonna-
asking if you're gonna release that tool, if you're gonna have that. And I think that, the board needs to decide if that's the route that they want to take. Been down this road about a customizable tool and a link and don't want to do that anymore. So it's got to be tight if you're going to do it.
Ms. Burr?
Thank you so much for all of your work. I have a question that's about like the bonuses and stuff.
Mhm.
Is there any way to like prorate them or spread them out because they're taxed at so much higher? Or do they just have to be given as bonuses?
I think we have a couple of different ways, right, we go about that. So one, that's where we think about our timing quite a bit in payroll. And so in terms of whether we pair that with sort of their normal check or if we do it as a standalone sort of supplementary item. And so we'll stress test that to make sure that it is done in a way that's helpful for our employees.
Question. So we went to a great training last week and we were asking questions around the state board. When does money come in from federal, state, and local? And what is I guess, I don't know if we call it the operational reserve or I'm not sure what we call it, the fund balance. And how does that look as far as like for all of these increases? I guess is my big question. Like, does that feel tight or does it feel?
Yeah, so I think kind of a couple of concepts in there. So right, our primary funding drivers, right, are that state, local, and federal. The state, where the state funding is concerned, even before there's a state budget, the Department of Public Instruction gives us sort of a planning amount that we can anticipate. And then once there actually is a state budget, they start to release those in buckets. And I wish there was a better word, allotments or buckets. And so we're one of the last states to do it that way, in getting all these buckets of money. And so we will see close to 70 separate buckets of state money that will trickle in. We've seen some come in the past couple of weeks that are sort of the easier ones to appropriate, but the state eventually gets them all in our hands, and they allow us to order the cash resources that we need to meet our obligations while they're sort of going through those motions. Where the local is concerned, right, the typical school system sees 12 installments of county appropriation from their commissioners. We work in a very great partnership in Durham in that they recognize that we pay a lot of expenses that are front heavy in the year and things that are due in July and August. And so the flow in Durham is that we receive 2 installments in the month of July to sort of front load our cash, and then we receive 1 per month, with the final one being in May to make sure we get 12. And they're always good for it. And then federal is complicated, and so whereas the state and the county operate on the same fiscal year that we do of a July 1 to June 30. I'll use the word partners loosely, and the federal government operate on a fiscal year that starts October 1st. And as we administer our federal grants, we always know that the months of July, August, and September are in our new state fiscal year, but belong to the old federal year. And so we make sure to carry over sufficient federal resources to cover those 3 months prior to the new fiscal year for the federal government starting October 1st. And obviously we watch that carefully with this current administration and this current Congress. And so we will likely provide updates throughout the year as all that kind of unravels with them if we have any new surprises where our federal friends are concerned. And that's also a great point too, in terms of, right, you speak to the fund balance, right? And so it's one of many reasons why school systems carry some degree of fund balance just due to federal uncertainties, due to sometimes state uncertainties. And so we're in the throes of completing the audit for the fiscal year that just closed and stress testing our balance sheet with our auditors. And so just sort of loosely speaking, we're expecting that the fund balance in Durham will return to where it was in 2023 prior to the various challenges that have transpired. And so we feel satisfied that our fund balance will position us so that this administration no longer has to make difficult mid-year choices, as we have had to do since Dr. Lewis and I have been here, and that we can navigate those things a little more long range and a little more timely versus having to make kind of stringent freezes and adjustments midstream. And so that's very excited to move into that space. Yeah.
I see Ms. Rivero, and then I can come back to you, Ms. Rogers.
Can I follow up on the fund balance question?
Are you fine with if she wasn't? Okay, go ahead.
So can you tell us, Mr. Teeter, a little bit about why we would use the fund balance, how you all would seek approval to use the fund balance? Yeah.
So most common, right, so the two sort of prevailing things for me has been one, if we have a non-recurring sort of one-time cost for the district, right, that becomes necessary, that is often a good use of fund balance. And on occasion, we truly have a surprise that no one could have possibly predicted, and there's no other available sources to deal with that. That is a space where we would call on, and that's a space that fortunately Durham Public Schools had it in 2023 to call on to deal with some of those challenges at that time. I feel like I'm missing part of, oh yes. the approval.
How?
Yes, and so just in terms of approval, we have to, so in the course of the year, you'll see that we bring you budget amendments, right, to sort of amend our starting point with the budget. And so we have to explicitly receive permission from the board, right, to appropriate any fund balance if we're going to use that. And we're starting this year without the need to do so. And if that were to arise, we would have to bring that request to you and explain why we're doing it and how much, and really give you a lot of good explanation behind that.
Yes, Ms. Rivera. Hey.
Thank you so much for the presentation, for the amount of work you guys have been putting into this to even present the different models. I have a couple questions. Very upfront. I know you said for the fund balance, we're returning back to the 2023 amount. I don't know if there was a dollar amount that was in the negative or the positive, and we were black or red within that number. So that's my first question.
Pulling up the clearinghouse, but I'll say the, so where that, so the positive, negative is a good question, and it's a complicated answer for Durham Public Schools, but I think it's important to convey that. And so broadly speaking, Durham Public Schools, has never not had the fund balance, but has had some challenges or some liabilities against its fund balance that made it unavailable to use, even if we wanted to. And so there were just kind of broadly, so if you were to look at the financial statements, right, it would show that there is a total fund balance, and then it would show the available amount as a negative number. And so one driver behind that was mostly different operating funds owing money back to local, right? And so there were just sort of obligations against that. And then, we worked very carefully just sort of with the accounting team to help mitigate those situations where we end a fiscal year and another fund owes our local fund money. And then also working very carefully with our great school nutrition program that was in the news the last couple of days to sort of reduce sort of their reliance on local resources and to reduce funds, right, that they owed the local fund. And so just kind of broadly speaking, like looking in the $17 million kind of range without constraints against it. And so very excited to have that, even though, right, I never desire to use it. It's if we had an emergency, it's stressful to think like we couldn't access it because of those technicalities that make it unavailable to access. And a great example of that was in December, we had the urgent need to replace some technology, and it was about $1.2 million, just shy of that. And the only place where we had that we could legally touch that cash was in our capital outlays fund balance. We were very fortunate as we went through this year that we have given that money back to capital outlay before we closed out this year. And so we did well enough in the year that we were able to give them their funding back. But in December of 2025, that was the only place we could go to get that kind of cash. And so, so very glad to be moving into that space that when your 26 financials are audited and the local government commission has approved them, if we had an emergency that was more appropriate for local fund balance, we could tap into that if we had to as a district.
Okay, another question. So as we're talking through, so as we know, our district in the past, we've had some challenges. What is the plan, or do we have a 3 to 5 year long budget that we're looking at? Where it's great to talk about these salaries right now and what this looks like right now, but this is all very fresh on this clawback that happened a couple of years ago. How do we ensure that we're not going to do that again?
Yeah,
It wasn't a clawback,
Sorry.
just to be clear. We didn't take back anybody's money. It was not a clawback.
Thank you.
But I think there was a sort of an adjustment downward
Yes.
at a point moving forward, right? It was frustrating. And so that sat heavy with me and Mr. Barfield. And, we did not live through that. We did not work in Durham when that happened, but we read about it. And we've had so many classified employees approach us to say, can you give me something in writing that says you're not going to come back later, right, and pull this right? And so that stress was very real for our employees. And so we spent months and months and months just sort of agonizing over the support that's behind, right? So that the calculator tool that you see is a very pretty interface of a lot of math and formulas, making sure that we are able to deliver this within the additional resources that we have. And so then part two of that is, so part one we've got, right? And then part two is that when we go back downstairs, right, to put this information in our system, we load these in the correct way that doesn't trigger a new type of error, right? And so we will be micromanaging that very intensely, with our team to make sure it's uploaded in a way that doesn't create new problems and undermine all the good work that went into that math in this first part.
I'll just jump in on that too. That has also been part of the work that Jeremy and his team has been doing. One, to bring our systems up to 21st century standards in terms of not, allowing spaces for errors, and they test things many times, to ensure that we don't, we had the issues with the pay, and then we also had some issues with people not being paid, and so putting systems in place to ensure that that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Rivera, were you done with your comments?
Oh, I had one more. Thank you. So kind of back to that question though, do we have a budget that doesn't just predict for 26, 27,
Yeah.
but for following years?
Right. And so we're in this constant state, right, of thinking about, so finance committee members, very first thing on your agenda, right? So I'm front loading your agenda, like the very first thing that we've loaded in the folders, right, sort of are our calendars for one, right, for this next cycle of budget planning and trying to develop a 2-year budget for this upcoming cycle. And then also, right, we've got a calendar for how we're going to report out and manage this current year budget, right, that's going on. And so we know sort of going into that, in addition to those calendars, right, lifting up sort of a number of the deferred needs or requests through this cycle, right? So we know that the minimum wage is not escalated to the point that we hoped it would, or to the point that our employee association hoped it would. And so that's going to be at the forefront, right, of that multi-year sort of budget work, of just sort of mapping out where that needs to move over the next couple of years and what kind of resources are we going to need for that. You see things like our facility plan that move in tandem with that, our technology plan that's multi-year that moves in concert with that. And so that's stuff that we're very excited to talk about through this newly formulated finance committee, and then lifting up to the full board from there.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just one response, just as we are thinking about this budget, and as we're thinking about finance, two things I want to just throw out there is that, as the finance committee, as we're processing what this is going to look like for this budget to be a values-based budget, so that it directly reflects the values of our district, and just making sure that that stays in line with what we're doing. But with that as well, it kind of leads me to my next point. It feels like we have a lot more questions right now of kind of where everyone's at, and just that we have these tools that you're offering just for everyone to start playing with things, to where I feel like at this point for myself, I would put a recommendation that the salary schedules that are on the agenda right now be put on finance committee. So I'll put a motion to move the salary schedule to finance committee for finance committee to review those and just look at different projections, just to ensure that we can see how the whole thing plays out. And then they bring a recommendation back to the board for the August board meeting.
I will say that we'll delay our objective of wanting to, not have our folks wait, even longer for, the raises, and, so just want to put that in space.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for saying that. Yes, there will be a sense of doing this practice of doing this back pay, but I also want to just emphasize that we just want to make sure we're doing this just with good eyes. We are, as many of you know, we're fresh on the board, so we're looking at this budget kind of as I would call it fire hose at moments, which is great, but we want to just make sure that, or at least I want to make sure that as we are moving forward, before we just approve it, getting more community input on it, especially since it was only live since Monday to the public, to give other educators within the DPS system enough time to even look at it. And if we are going to even offer this tool that was mentioned earlier, we want to give people space and time to actually interact with the tool to see how this plays out for them. So I understand that it does put kind of some strains on the district, but that would be my recommendation, and that would be my motion.
So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second, but can I also ask a question?
Well,
That,
yes, during discussion. So it's been moved by Ms. Rivero to move this out to, move the salary schedules to the Finance Committee to review. Is there,
So yeah, to review and meet but before the next board meeting. So I would probably put in there between the first or second week of August.
so the motion is to review the salary schedules, to send the salary schedules to the Finance Committee to review before the next board meeting. Would that be the work session, before the work session in August? And it was seconded by Ms. Katave. Or any discussion? I saw Mr. Tabb's hand.
yeah, well, I mean, thank you, Mr. Teeter, for your presentation, and my question was related to that, so I can either table that until a more appropriate time, or I can ask it now.
You can go ahead.
Okay, I was just curious, and perhaps this was included in your presentation, and I'm just still getting up to speed with the terminology. But it is my understanding that every year an employee works in DPS, they move up a step, correct? So will employees be moving up 2 steps to make up for the lack of raises in fiscal year 25, 26? Or we're just sort of gonna start from where we're at and keep moving up a step?
So in the 25, 26 year, for purposes of moving them a step, right, they did, right, so their check stubs
Okay.
reflected an additional year, but just the money moved with it.
Gotcha.
And so, and then for this year, they'll once again move and it'll reflect another year of service and a step. But this time, right, there's money baked in there with the step.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, we're in discussion, and I saw Mr. Tabb's hand.
Thank you very much. Quick question. You made a statement that you wanted to make it available for other people to look at it, at the tool.
Mhm.
But would that not put us in a position then to have to delay it? Or I'm just asking.
I think just, just kind of based on the questions that we've had over the last couple of days, right? It feels like a good thing to do, right? Just to make that available for people to interact with and live what we went through, right? To get where we were, in a user-friendly way.
Okay, so Dr. Lewis, if, I think the whole purpose of this special meeting was to look at the salary schedule and try to get people paid. Delaying it, what are your sentiments in terms of sentiments if we delay it?
I think you've heard me in spaces before talking about our students. Our students can't wait. And I've also said in spaces that our educators and staff can't wait either. And all across North Carolina, we've had to wait, as I mentioned, 1,014 days for a budget. And I think as we begin this new year and, come off of a successful year that we've had, I think our employees, deserve to at some point be paid on time, given the state just passed their budget. And so again, that's the sentiment, not wanting our staff to wait any longer. Yes, we can do back pay, but they've been there, done that, and are quite frankly tired of waiting. So that's the sentiment.
Thank you for that. Then I would probably, from my perspective, is that we allow the tool to be made public and people can look at exactly how you got to where we are. But as a board member, I definitely do not want to hold people back from their pay. That's important to me. So, and I also want us as a board to, if we delay things, let's be very consistent that when other things come up, that we also use that same type of energy, that we cannot rush into things if we decide to go that route. I just want to make sure that's on record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tab. Ms. Rogers?
There are two things for me that come up. And so I just want to express why I would vote no to waiting. The first would be, have the committee meetings been scheduled?
The links they have not been scheduled yet. The links have been shared with board members to give their availability for those particular meetings. And so I would encourage all board members to go ahead and send in their availability so that those meetings can be scheduled.
Yep. And as a member of the Finance Committee, I would also say that I filled out that link the same day it came out. Haven't heard anything back. It didn't ask me when I was not available. So I'm not available August 2nd through 7th because I'll be traveling for work. And that really does put us up against the wall for the August 13th work session. I also have some, and I know other board members are traveling during that period too.
Can you give me those dates again?
August 2nd through the 7th. I think the other piece of that is administration brought us as a board, as a collective, information asking us to approve the salary schedule. I would like us to make sure that the conversations, the questions that we're asking, and the things that are being put in front of the full board are addressed by the full board and not just by a subset of members of the board. Because it's not clear to me here what is causing people pause. And I need to be able to take that, and each board member needs to be able to take that into their committee meetings to get a better understanding and represent what the full board would want. So whatever product comes out of that committee comes to the board ready for approval. And so we have a lot of work to do to get there between now and then if we want changes to the document that administration has brought us in terms of approving a salary schedule. So I look forward to hearing more discussion about why we're not approving today.
Ms. Rivera?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tab and Ms. Rogers, for both of your comments on that. For myself, the reason why I am feeling hesitant to approve that as is right now is for a couple reasons. One, for me, we just got this information rather recently. So nothing from the district, but rather from the state. So with the state just releasing these numbers, and I mean, the finance team has done, I mean, the finance department has done a fantastic job of going very quickly to put all of these scales and models together very quickly. I just want to make sure that we don't rush and that we actually take some time to actually look at the whole picture. As we know, and as was mentioned earlier, other counties are going back to the county commissioners, really trying to figure out how to navigate what just came down from the state. And we are trying to figure out how to respond, but I just want to be a little bit slower in our response, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. Oftentimes when we rush into these big decisions, there can be really big implications later. So I just want to slow us down just a little bit for us to just kind of see the whole picture, see, okay, right now we're saying 1822 an hour. Are we going to land there, or do we want to adjust anything else? Looking at what came in from the state and from the county and seeing what different pools and pots of money we do have, and can we distribute anything any other way? And we don't have those answers right now, and that's okay. But I feel like that's what the finance committee is essentially building to do, is to have these deeper conversations, talk through what do we have, how does this whole thing work, and then bring the recommendation back to the board to say, hey, board, we've reviewed these numbers and this is what we feel comfortable doing, so that the board can then respond to what our finance committee is bringing together. So that's just where I'm at right now, and anyone else can chime in or say, yes, you are there, or you're not there, whatever, wherever you guys are at is great, but that's where I'm at.
Are there any, okay, I see Ms. Burr and then I see Mr. Tab. Will there be any, will those be the last two comments? Anybody else going to comment after that? Okay, depends on what you hear. All right. So, yeah. So did I call Ms. Burr?
I just want to thank my colleagues. I do want to thank and appreciate finance so much for your work because I know it's a lot. I think for me, I would feel, I do feel the need to move over this information to the Finance Committee. I'm in the same boat as Ms. Rogers. I'm going to be out of town that first week of August, but I am available next week. And I think where I am at is I would like us to comply with the living wage policy that we have, which is policy 7600. And I did see Mr. Teeter's answers to my questions. And so I feel like the need, which is around if we increase that to 1922, it does create compression problems later down the line. And that is a concern. And getting a calculator today was really great. And I feel like we could, try it out some and see how we can address that issue. So that was where I'm at with trying to wait till a finance committee meeting. And just people will get paid. Everyone's going to get paid. They're just not going to see their pay increases yet. So just to remind folks that.
Mr. Tab?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm just kind of concerned that we've been down this road before with people not being paid. And I just don't want, as a district, that we lose that momentum again for people to now start saying we didn't get paid again. Now we have to wait and wait. And I'm kind of concerned whether or not taking it to finance, what if, that's the what if, that we don't land where we think we still should have landed? Is it another delay? That concerns me. And I'll leave it as that and I'm done. Okay, that's where I am.
I saw Ms. Katave and Ms. Rogers, so I'll start with Ms. Katave.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Tab, and I completely understand. I will share that I have full confidence in Mr. Teeter and his team in order to ensure that whatever back pay needs to happen is done right. But the community feedback that I received so far would be that it would be better to take our time and ensure we get this right. And the public has only been able to see these pay scales for a little bit more than 24 hours. So that's my only pause. And it may be that this is the best we can do for all of those involved who are going to be getting paid on these pay scales. But I just think that we need a little time to ensure that that's the case.
Ms. Rogers?
What about both and? What if we approve the salaries and as they are, let them be paid out in July, send it to Finance Committee, see if we can find more money and bump the pay through Finance Committee, and then they back pay July for anything else we can find or move around or manipulate. Could y'all do that?
I'm concerned when you say if we can find some money.
I know. I mean, if the board directs y'all to go ask the county, then we would go ask the county. I'm not making that suggestion. I'm just saying, maybe right. Is that an option?
And I think the other thing I would add, right, is that there are aspects of the continuation budget that we will want to revisit as they play out over the next few weeks. So just if the Utilities Commission ends up sort of conforming closer to where the Attorney General has pressured Duke Energy, let us kind of unpack that again and see how much is that going to free up from that component of the continuation budget, and can we, right, and that's just one example. We've predicted worst case scenario for charter enrollment. Do we come in better than that, right? So there are some other things that may shift in a favorable way for the district where we could find money in a meaningful way without taking something away.
I just have to name as an employee that goes to work every day and gets paid by the hour. It's important to me that I get my pay increase. When it's time to get my pay increase, it comes like clockwork. And we've been waiting. Folks have been waiting for this, and I really don't want them to have to wait any longer. So if there's room to do both this and take it back to the committee, let the committee work through to see if it can come up later, I would love if we could entertain that.
Mr. Kaysen.
That's why I said, you know, what I hear. That's really along the lines of what I wanted to hear. I totally understand the fact that the administration wants to do something now for our employees. Also, the public comment that I've heard, there's just kind of a shyness of what if it's not going to work? And the state was the delay, not within. So I really appreciate all the work that's been done here, but I would love to see if we can do better than 1822, if even within the 7.5 million that we have. So the both and really sounds good to me as well, to approve what you are bringing tonight, but also give the finance committee the means and time to see if we can do a little better as well.
All right, board, are we able to, I see more hands coming up. Are we ready to like try to amend the motion that's on the floor? Are we able to do that?
Can we vote the motion on the floor, and if it fails? No, you want to amend?
I'm going to ask Eva, what would you suggest we do in this moment? Because the motion has been seconded, we're in discussion, and then there's an ask to amend, and I want to make sure that I'm clear on how we do that when that happens.
You got to use the mic. Sorry.
Yes. Someone could make a motion to amend the pending motion and you would vote on that. And if it passes, then you vote on the amended motion. Second, if you wanted to withdraw the motion, you can do that. And then someone can just make a new motion that,
Okay.
or Ms. Rivera, anyone can make a new motion. Or the third would be just to vote on the existing motion. And if it fails, then make a new motion.
All right. Are these comments about the current motion on the floor?
About addressing Mrs. Rogers'
All right.
amendment, possible amendment.
All right. Go ahead, Ms.
Is that
Rivera.
okay? Okay. So thank you, Ms. Rogers, actually for bringing up the both and option. So my only hesitation with the both and is putting a date to when we would decide on this. So if it is like, okay, we're going to approve things as is, then we want to review and come back and decide if we can do a bump by,
The same time that you recommended it.
oh, really, by next
in
month?
in the original motion.
Oh, okay.
Is that enough time for y'all?
So I think I know it's not formally communicated yet. I think we've reached a tentative date of when we were so in cabinet a couple hours ago, reached sort of a tentative date of when we were hoping first finance committee would happen, which was August 19th, I believe. And so then that, and so if we're, and so if we are, if we are going to do something like after reviewing materials, if we find that we can do something different, additional, generally by this week in every month, right, is kind of what I need to work with, right, to make it happen in that period. You could make the decision that it's effective in September or the same month that the bonuses may happen or whatever, right? So we can kind of work through that. But what we can, as finance officer, I can commit to, we can, if we operationalize these things for July payroll, as a staff member responsible for finance committee, we will sort of pivot with the materials that we had planned for August to add additional kind of insight with what we could do additional, and if that's feasible, right? So we're comfortable kind of working with it in that way. And we can do a retro at any point, Right? So locking in these scales as they are now does not preclude us from going back later and doing some other retroactive activity at any point in the year that you've authorized. So, yes.
Mr. Tab, did you have a comment?
Thank you. Thank you all for the dialogue and especially in trying to look for solutions. And I like the fact that we are working towards making sure that what we were supposed to be having this meeting about, which is to get this approved so that we don't, these people, our people can get paid, which is important. And also being able to put systems in place or to allow us an opportunity to really study the materials that we do have. So having both things happen, if we can make that happen, I would recommend that this board do this because it also shows us being able to work together to looking for a common cause and the solution to making things happen. Okay, so I would definitely recommend trying to do both. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tab. Ms. Katave?
My only concern with passing the schedules that they are today and then revisiting them would be a scenario in which someone's raise changes. Like if money is being moved around to ensure that we can get the lowest paid staff to 18.22 an hour, that has to come from somewhere. And so I certainly want to avoid a scenario in which we give someone a raise and then that changes. Like, we don't want to do that again. And I guess I'm just curious, like, where extra money would come from, right? The way I'm imagining potentially moving these pay scales is working with the pot we have now. And so yeah, that's my concern, is that we're not gonna like magically find several $1,000,000 to get everyone to 18.22. Sorry, 19.22. Sorry, too many numbers.
Ms. Rogers?
So is 1922 really the number we're trying to get to, or is it what the county lowest wage county employees will be getting this fiscal year? Because the policy specifically names that the county manager is supposed to identify what the living wage is for Durham. And the lowest salary, the lowest wage for county employees, it does not automatically equate to the living wage for Durham. Problem with board policy is it governs people that work for the district. It does not govern the county manager. And so the county manager hasn't delivered that number. Perhaps we could put in a request to find out what that number is for living wage for Durham. But also, like, is the bar that we're trying to get to 1922, or is it the minimum wage that the county employees are going to make this fiscal year? Because those are two different things.
Ms. Burr?
I think in the practice right now, it's 19.22. And, you know, technically we know that that's not the living wage across
What in the practice, what do you mean?
at the county. It's 19.22.
It was last year.
Yes, and they were supposed to update it by July 1st, and I don't think that they have.
Okay.
All right. Is anyone, or is the board ready to, I think we should withdraw the motion. And would the board like to, is there anyone who would like to propose a new motion?
Yes, if Ms. Rivera is willing to withdraw,
So,
yes.
Ms. Rivera, you would have to withdraw your motion if you want to, in order to give the board an opportunity to create a new motion.
Oh, the fun questions.
Mhm.
Okay, do I withdraw my motion? So here's the only stipulation I have is what Ms. Bent-Katef mentioned, is that if we approve the salary schedule as is, then we are utilizing the $7.5 million and it's now going to be allotted to all the different positions that are currently standing. Now, the problem with that is that if we actually do want to increase this to a livable wage, that's 1922, which was the last year Durham County number, then we will no longer have the $7.5 million to do that with. So then we have to find additional money from an outside source that we may or may not have for something we may or may not be able to do. So it almost feels as though we are reaching for something that may or may not exist with this idea of let's approve, hoping that money might come from somewhere, my bad. So that's kind of where I'm at, to where I don't, unless there's another option, and we haven't really identified if there really is additional money somewhere that we could utilize at another point. And if there's not additional money that we're going to utilize at another point, then to utilize the $7.5 million right now for everything as it stands is going to limit being able to move it later.
Ms. Rogers?
I have a question. It might be for Jeremy, might be for Eva. The state has determined in the framework of their budget that their classified staff will get a 3% increase. Do we, as Durham Public Schools, have the ability to not give all employees that 3%? We
Yeah.
have to give them that 3%. And right now, in these salary schedules, the allocation for classified employees is what? It depends on the scale and where they fall in their steps.
And in most cases, right, we exceed that state minimum of 3.
So when we are thinking long-term planning, right? Let's say this year, the board decided classified employees over a certain number. We drew the line somewhere. We're only going to get the 3% state allocation. How do we avoid compression in the coming years as we continue to see the state and local increases? How do we catch them back up?
Be hard, right? I mean, it would enhance the investment you have to make later. And so, and we've been prior, I think, prior to my time, Durham's been through that a little bit already, right? With so the period of time where we had some employees who got 11, we had another group that got 7, right? And so that's already sprinkled sort of in our compression challenge now. And so I think we would exacerbate that. So, we've, I think to even kind of go beyond your question, so we started developing, right, superintendent's recommended budget, late September, early October in long range, thinking about things and contemplating classified pay. And we've, I know as a finance team, right, we've sort of exhausted many scenarios of what we might do to torture those salary schedules and change things and move things around. And and so not to sound dismissive, right, but we've wrestled with these things, right? We know how Durham thinks and how our folks think, and we've wrestled with a lot of different scenarios and what new problems would we create with certain inputs and things to think about. And so I think in my view, what we brought forward, right, is our sort of best case scenario with the 7.5. And then, but yeah, I think I am hesitant to do other things that would exacerbate the compression we already have, to answer your question.
So what I'm feeling is that we, like Mr. Tab was saying, we want to try to do both things. We're working really hard to try to solve the problem, giving us enough space, giving our constituents enough space to be able to process what is happening, to see if we've considered all the options for getting to 1922. But we're not sure how to do that without with the uncertainty of where those funds would actually come from if we made that decision, if we approved it now and made that decision. So, it doesn't sound like Ms. Rivero is comfortable withdrawing her motion because of that. So someone would need to make a motion to amend the pending motion in order for us to figure out how we would make that compromise. Or we can move on to vote on the motion we currently have on the floor. Ms. Rivero.
So so I know currently we are basically trying to decide if we can approve the DPS salary scales. Can we separate the salary scales? So we are approving the certified salary schedule, and we are still working the classified salary schedule.
I've never done that before, and so I don't know the legal answer to that. And if we took them in pieces, I think I get the question, right? The certified is much more straightforward. And so can you think of a reason why not?
I cannot think of a reason why not, no.
I'm also curious, a question that I have is, when we're making this decision, are we literally talking about people not getting paid at all because we have not approved them? Or so people would still get paid, we're just talking about retro pay, correct?
Would get paid what they got paid last year.
They would get paid
would
what they
not get
got
their
paid
pay.
last year, their retro pay would come later. So the real consequence is that employees would have to wait on their raise, but they wouldn't be waiting on their check. Okay. All right.
Yeah, my issue
move-
with that, and I appreciate the creative thinking, but those will be our lowest paid workers that we're asking to wait. So I just want to put that out there.
I do want to note that, the budget bill says for your non-certified employees whose salaries are paid by state funds, that they shall receive an increase of 3%, effective July 1st. So not really optional. And I know that you're discussing that we would do it retroactively. I've honestly not looked into whether, like, how long you can hold pay that they are entitled to.
Who was, okay, Ms. Rogers.
Sorry.
Sorry.
What would it look like? And just go with me here because I don't know the answers. To approve the certified, approve a 3% increase for classified, and that's what they see in July. And then we come back, we send the other part back to the finance committee to figure out what the actual increase, what if any additional local increase people would get. I know that's difficult because there are people who are paid just on local funding.
Technically, we can do it. That's, and then I think too, I would not want to lose, I would probably look for clarity on a couple of things, right? So if we said, okay, 3% increase to classified tables with or without the step increase at that point, right? Are we just doing a raw 3%? And then and then we have the separate issue of substitute teachers, right? Like, are we going to approve the sub rates that we've lifted up, right, as a separate issue? Right, so just to kind of think a couple of nuances that I would want to clarify in that scenario so that the staff is clear on what we're doing next week.
Mr. Tab.
Thank you. I feel as though that we are putting ourselves in a position to muddy the waters again and taking us back into a place that we have been working extremely hard to get away from. And now going back and doing all these changes and studying the salaries and moving it and people still gonna start feeling like, what is Durham Public Schools doing? I want people to get paid, but I also want us to move in a direction where we can get them to the 1922. So just trying to find the simplest way to be able to do this, I think is our best course. Not to make it more complicated, you know. So if we can just find a way just to keep it as simple as we can to get people paid without us having to deal with someone saying that we were supposed to give them their pay increase by a certain date, based by law with the budget. And then we can take it to also to finance to continue to work through it. But let's not complicate things, because I think that we're gonna have the community or our employees now saying, we're going back to now they don't want to give us our raise, they don't want to do this. I just don't want us to be in that space again.
Mr. Kaysen?
Yeah, I agree. When I think about possibly pulling out, just saying 3% across the board for classified, it doesn't look that simple on these charts. And some would not benefit from that type of move. So I would prefer to move it forward as is, and then see what we can do within a month.
When you're saying move forward as is, are you talking about the current motion on the floor, or are you talking about approving the salary scales as they are right now?
Approving the salary scales as they have been presented to us.
Right? Okay. Are there any other comments? We still have a motion on the floor. It has not been withdrawn. It has not been, there's been no motion to amend. So the current motion on the floor is that the salary schedule, so this is where we are. The motion was to move the salary schedules to the Finance Committee, which would meet before the work session. And then to bring that recommendation to the work session. That's what's currently on the floor. That has not been withdrawn. If we can go ahead and vote now, vote that up or down. If there's no more discussion, let's see what's going to happen with that. Okay. So, all those in favor? Repeat the motion. The motion is to take the salary schedules now to Finance Committee, for Finance Committee to have this, to further this conversation. And then Finance Committee would meet before the work session in August, and then bring this to the work session in August. That is the motion on the floor. Got that correct, right? Is that correct, Ms. Rivero?
Yes-ish. Only one part that I included in there was that they would bring a recommendation to the board and we would vote on it at the following board meeting.
Okay,
Huh? With no vote today.
so there would be no vote today. It would go to Finance Committee, and then the recommendation would come to the board at the first work session. And then we would vote on it in the board meeting, the following board meeting in August. So that is the recommendation. All right. I'm sorry, I keep,
Say one more time before, I'm sorry. Just one more time, I just have to advocate in not wanting our staff to wait. The other point I wanted to make, and being completely vulnerable and honest, the board approved your superintendent a raise. So if I don't have to wait, I don't want my staff to have to wait. So I just had to say that.
all right. So, woof, okay. So all those in favor? Vote aye. Say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
All those, all those opposed, use the same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the motion does not pass. So now I have to, let's see, we need a motion, we need another motion.
I make a motion to approve the salary schedules presented and encourage further conversation at the Finance Committee around the salary schedules for the August 19th Finance Committee meeting.
Second.
So there's a motion to approve the salary schedules as they are and to bring the discussion for the 1922 to the Finance Committee meeting. The date hasn't been selected yet.
On August 19th. He said that.
Well, he's, I think you mentioned that was a date that you were suggesting, but no, everybody hasn't responded to the doodle poll yet, right?
I think we have all responses for our finance committee. There's other
Oh, okay.
couple of committees. We're still waiting on some responses.
All right. So April 19th, Finance Committee. I
August.
mean, August, Lord. Where am I? I'm in April. Okay. August 19th, Finance Committee meeting. Okay, let me say that motion again. There's a motion is to approve the salary schedule and to bring the conversation about minimum wage 1922 to the Finance Committee on August 19th. Is that correct? Did I capture that, Ms. Rogers?
And I just want to make sure it captures the one correction we lifted up earlier to make sure that one scale for before and after care starts at 1822. So
Right? So we're moving to approve the salary schedule with,
As amended.
as amended.
Mhm, make it
Thank
easy.
you. As amended, and everything else I just said. And we captured it, all right? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, use the same sign.
Aye.
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 So it passes 4-3. Woo-woo. Okay.
Thank you.
Now we're moving to, next item on the agenda is actually the two items that were on consent for operations. So first is the parking lot asphalt pavement at Southwest Elementary School. Ms. Rogers, you brought these off of consent. Would you like to start the questions?
Yeah, I think my questions are there any presentations?
Oh,
No presentation.
it was on consent.
Okay. I thought there was a request to take them off of consent prior to this. Anyway, okay. So my first question around let's talk about Southwest because that's the first item, right? We'll stick with that.
Mhm.
Can you speak to the other paving projects that were done over the summer? What those were? Why they're not on the agenda for approval? Will this project be completed before open house, before school starts? And the bidding process on this, did it go through the WMBE process and were there multiple bids?
Yes. So just to give you a bit of backstory, we maintain a database that tells us the status of our asphalt projects. That was most recently updated in 2025. When we were looking to use the currently available asphalt funding balance, we looked at the top 6 schools with the greatest need. For those schools, we went out to the sites with paving contractors to look at all 6 sites and to assess those sites. Of those, there were 3 schools that rose to the top with the greatest need. Those facilities were Southwest, Brogdon Middle School, and Githens Middle School. From there, we looked at how you would parse out the work and which schools had portions that could be easily cordoned off and separated rather than a simple patch and repair, where we could look at making greater improvements in the areas. So of those three projects, two of the projects came in at under $90,000, under the threshold for the board, and were moved to the summer projects list. The third project, Southwest Elementary School, was the most comprehensive needs, including a basketball play area and ADA accessibility and safety concerns in some areas. So that one required a separate request. The reason why we're here tonight is because we do sit within a window of opportunity to have that facility upgraded prior to the start of the school year. And the contractor that was the low bid that was selected has made a commitment to getting that work done for us in an expeditious manner so for the start of school. I believe that answers most of your questions. We did go through a process of walking three separate contractors to all of the sites, and we selected the lowest bidder that is most qualified for those jobs. So having said that, that's why it's on the special requests tonight for approval so that we can have that facility up and running prior to the start of school. Our next opportunity would not be until break to do that work because it does require relocating staff in the parking area and relocating students in some of the play area.
Thank you. So I'd offer a motion to approve the Southwest blacktop repair.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Rogers, seconded by Ms. Rivero to approve the parking lot asphalt paving at Southwest Elementary School. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. It passes 6-0. All right. Next we have, thank you so much for answering those questions for us. Lions Farm Elementary School Learning Village classroom expansion. Questions?
If I may, I can give some backstory on this, just to give you a little bit of history of this project, so you're a little more informed about what it is and why we've arrived at this.
Okay.
So this particular project is for 6 modular classrooms and a modular restroom building located at Lions Farm Elementary School. The school was a brand new ground-up school that was built in and delivered in 2022. Beginning the 2023 fall school year, the facility was at capacity. And every year since that, we have been exceeding capacity at that school. And just to tell you a little bit about the region and the school itself, it's located in the southeast region. It is in a growth area for the district. The existing facility is 79,000 square feet. It's a pre-K through 5 facility, and it has a planned capacity of 584 students, okay? It was also originally designed with the possibility of an additional wing being added to that facility that could accommodate an additional approximately 300 students. So originally it was designed at its maximum to accommodate significantly more students than this facility currently has. The district standard size for an elementary school is around 136,000 square feet. So it would have brought the facility up to, kind of the desired maximum occupancy. So following, multiple school years of exceeding capacity, just to tell you about where the school sits today, with the planned capacity of 584, for the fall school year, currently enrolled and subscribed is 658 students. It is anticipated that the total enrollment, when we actually get to day 40, will be somewhere between 672 and 686 students in a school that's designed for 584. So to tell you a little bit of history about the planning decisions and how we arrived here. So the planning conversations around overcrowding at the school began in early fall of 2024. And there have been numerous ongoing conversations to arrive at the decision where we are tonight. Those conversations have been had with the principal. They've also been organized through our facilities, forecasts, and student assignment group, which is run through our planning department. And that working group consists of both senior leadership at the district as well as senior instructional staff at the district. And they have been active participants in arriving at and analyzing possible solutions for this school. This has also been presented to Cabinet more than once, the options and ideas around how we might deal with overcrowding at the school. So beginning in August 2024, there was a presentation about student assignment, followed by September 2025. Senior leadership did a campus walk with the principal to analyze the condition. Currently, in order to meet the need, there are resource spaces and specialized spaces at this school that have been converted into classroom space, as well as areas in hallways where we can do breakout groups and things like that. So trying to deal with a significantly impacted school site. In November of 2025, there was a special facilities forecasts and student assignment presentation with the principal. And then in fall of 2025, there was a presentation to Cabinet as well. Followed by that, in January of 2026, we reviewed again with Cabinet the options that were available, and we did not reach a resolution for the site. And then in spring of 2026, leading to July, we had another group session in early July to talk about what the decisions would be for the site. The decisions, we look at a number of opportunities and options. We do not arrive at a modular solution easily. So we looked at boundary adjustments for this school. We also looked at closing the DLI program and moving that to another school site. We also looked at the pre-K program and the kinder program at the site. We considered capping. We also considered the possibility of restricting school choice. And we also looked at modulars. When we looked at this learning village concept and the use of modulars, the first thing that we did was look within our district to see if there were existing modulars that we could move easily to the site. We do have approximately 109 modulars currently sitting in the district. Of those sites, the ones that were either not being used or could be most easily used, we went out to those sites and analyzed those with a consultant. None of those were felt to be of good enough condition that they could be moved easily or well. And so it was determined that the best possible solution with a modular option would be to go with a new set of modulars for the facility. And at the July meeting of Cabinet, that was the direction that Cabinet selected as the selection to move forward. The reason why we're here tonight is because in order for us to mobilize, order modulars, and go through that process of getting those to the facility, it takes 12 to 15 months. If we make the decision now, we're sitting at a 12-month window to open the modulars in fall of 2027. So at the beginning of not this school year, but next school year, the facility would have some much needed relief for their students. So that is why we're here tonight. If we go beyond this window, we'll need to be looking at other solutions. In addition to the modular solution, it was determined by Cabinet to also do some boundary adjustment to the area as well. And that's something that will be coming forward in sometime between September and November. We'll be coming back to the board to talk about the impacts of growing together and areas within the district where we'd like to look at some small boundary changes to deal with either overcrowding or under enrollment in the school district. So having said that, to tell you a little bit about what the request is for tonight, the request tonight is to approve the design process. So we will require a set of drawings and we'll require a building permit to do this process. So this would be phase one. Phase 2 of the process would be both to select a contractor to do the installation. There will be utility work and some pavement work associated with this, and to also actually order the units themselves. So that would be something that will be coming back at a later date. But the desire tonight is to get an action to move forward with the design process so that we can start the process for improving the school for the 27-28 school year. So with that, I'll pause and we can go through any questions, comments, or thoughts folks have.
Board members, questions? I see no yes, okay. Ms. Rogers, Ms. Rivera, and then Ms. Burr. Oh, I see Mr. Tab too. In that order, Rogers, Rivera, Burr. Okay, so start with Ms. Rogers.
All right, so thank you for this presentation. You didn't have to start with me, but it's okay. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, that's why I was like, yes, but no, it's okay. I did send in my questions in advance. And I think I appreciate the response to the question about community engagement, and some of my colleagues have also sought engagement from the Lions Farm community. I think that's excellent. I'm particularly more concerned about engagement with other schools, with other parts of our community. We keep asking for more and more in funding, both in capital and for just the operation of the district. And I wonder, what are we doing to ask our community to help us make wise investments in our schools? And that means sometimes going to the next districted school or zone school. I also wonder what types of exploration have been done in like districts, in urban school districts, about what redistricting looks like. And when they cap schools, Wake County cap schools, is it time for us to start capping schools and having those conversations in some places? And I wonder how this fits in with the right sizing RFP that the board approved last month. And is approving this right now, I'm not a no, because I need more information. But is approving this right now contradictory to the work that we're asking folks to come in and do in terms of right sizing the district? We may have to consolidate some schools. What does it mean to be consolidating some schools in some parts of the district when we could redistrict a little bit more wider spread and maybe not have to consolidate some schools? I'm really concerned about the equity in this investment. This is a large additional investment that the same generation of students gets to experience. And so, how do we share that wealth across the district? And so I have some more concerns. I have some real concerns about this not being on a work session agenda. Lions Farm overcrowding. And I've said this before, I will continue to say it. Don't make y'all's problem our problem. And y'all have made this problem our problem. Except, okay, the reasoning is you need 13 to 15 months to change it, but we've known that Lions Farm has been overcrowded, and this request didn't come 3 months ago. This request didn't come ahead of the budget. And if it had come then, I might feel differently. And we've known that we're overcrowded. And so it also came public on Monday, and we haven't had an opportunity to really diligently engage with community. I think we heard the same sort of feedback during Growing Together when they launched the listening sections around Growing Together, and the only school communities that they pulled into the conversation were the magnet schools. And then it turned out all the schools were being touched, and those communities didn't get an opportunity to engage. And we can't keep repeating those mistakes. And so I would love to see a thorough presentation about how many seats you need open, about where the utilization rates are across the district, about how many people are applying and enrolling in the DLI program at Lions Farm, if it can be housed somewhere else. I'd like to see some more data that could help move us in a direction. I also didn't hear clearly. I mean, you said that some lines would be moved, but it's not clear exactly how many families would be impacted by the lines being moved. And getting a better understanding of all of that would push me personally closer to a yes if all that data had been included.
Well, first I'll say that district enrollment is not the same as neighborhood enrollment. We wouldn't bring this if we didn't need this. And I think Devin shared some of the things the steps we've taken prior to getting to this point. And as it relates to what the work that the right sizing would do, it's a both and. It's not should we do this or right sizing? It's and, because what's going to happen next, we're going to have to eventually add that addition on to that building, because that particular area of town is one of the fastest growing areas. We're seeing some gradual decrease in some areas of Durham. That one is showing uninterrupted growth over the next 5 to 10 years. And so that building should have been built a lot larger than it was originally built, but that's hindsight. And so we are now patching up what should have been done in the past. And so as we continue to grow in that area, and I think you've heard from some of the educators that came for public comment a couple of months ago, was the reason that we're bringing this tonight, because as Devin indicated, it's about a 12 to 15-month lead-in time there.
Ms. Burr.
Now, just wondering what happens now when there's so many students and there aren't modular units? What is this besides, is it just the hallways and the resource room, or?
Yeah, so the specialized spaces, the hallways, the resource spaces, those are all being used for instruction. The school is maxed out. If we do not get to a solution now for the 27-28 school year, we'll have to be looking at a variety of other solutions. I will just say that we spent a considerable amount of time with the facilities forecasts and student assignment working group and the leadership within that group to talk about carefully the impacts of closing a program, to talk about the importance of why DLI is at this school, to talk about the success of the programs at the school. So it is, it doesn't arrive to us tonight lightly and without very careful consideration before selecting this as the scenario of choice. The boundary adjustments, we've looked at a number of variety of boundary adjustments associated with this, and we'll certainly come back and have that as part of a conversation. But if we don't approve, we will have to make some other type of selection, because the school is absolutely at its max. The request has been ongoing for some time, and we'll need to do something to relieve the overcrowding that's happening there.
And just part two, like in regards to safety and number of people in the building and stuff, things like that, how is that right now in this
Yeah.
upcoming school year?
So we have walked the site. There were in the past areas where instruction was occurring that we felt were not adequate decisions. So we have made adjustments over time to those areas to make sure that we're always ensuring the safety of our students and our teachers and our staff. So we are monitoring that, but it's certainly an ongoing problem.
Ms. Burr, are you finished with your comments? Ms. Rivera?
Just let me share one other thing before we move on. We visited the school several times, and what we found at that school, when she talked about safety issues, with classrooms under stairwells, which is against fire code. And so I can't be an employee here and knowingly put our kids at risk of having classrooms that are under stairwells in a school. So we've made some adjustments as best we can over there, but there are no additional spaces. It is hard for a principal to function at a school when it is 100 kids over capacity. 30 kids we can manage, but 100 kids over capacity is hard for us to make any kind of adjustments in the school. And I do think the education has been affected a little bit by not having a media center, not having resource classrooms for those kids to go into.
So I have a couple questions. My first question is, so these modular units essentially this is not a permanent long-term solution, or am I misunderstanding that?
That's correct. The facility is relatively new. The goal would be that sometime in the next 5 to 15 years, we would be doing that addition onto the facility. We've carefully selected where those modulars would go so that those could remain in place during any future construction so that we don't impact the student count at the school. So yes, at some point, we would be recommending the addition onto the school.
Okay, so then my follow-up question to that, so you also mentioned that you already kind of decided on location, et cetera. Have you gotten a lot of impact or input from the Lions Farm community outside of just the principal, like the parents, the advocacy team at Lions Farm, to kind of hear what they also are thinking as well? Or is this a shared solution?
Are you talking about the location of the units or the concept in general?
Both and.
Yeah, so this is a very active community, a popular program, a school that has a really strong following. Principal Hopkins is an enormous advocate within the school for growing the school, for maintaining folks that want to be at that school to be there. So there has been active engagement throughout the whole process with people in his community about being able to have a facility that can accommodate all that want to come. So I believe that's been an ongoing conversation.
So then I guess my follow-up as well would be, so even the location, I know we've been getting different, and I'm sad that this isn't like a full presentation and we don't have public comment, because I feel like the community should have some more say if this is going to be a 5 to 10 year long solution. If the building plan isn't coming until longer in the future, this is going to be what's going to be standing in their building. And we have gotten some comments already around the location of where these modular units are going to be. So I just wanted to know if you have responded to any of that, or if you know of it, can they be moved? How does that impact? Because I've heard that they're on the opposite side they're going to be located almost near more in the back field, to where it's going to be a little bit harder for students to get back and forth inside and outside of the classrooms from the main to the modulars.
So the final location that was selected is up near the front of campus. We looked at numerous sites. There are mitigating factors on that site relative to slope, relative to water retention basins, also relative to where the sewer line connects and where it was intended to connect relative to the planned building expansion. We would like to minimize any disruption to building out and extending access to utilities to save money, and also to be within the zone of where the construction will be so that we're not adding additional costs. There were very few locations at the end of the day where we could actually place this village. The other area that was favorable was the soccer field area. That is a considerably longer distance. There was a concern about having students so remote to the building and being able to really be collaborative and be going in and out of the building. So we tried to select based on, all of those conditions. And I think we have certainly arrived at the best location for where they should be sitting.
So I just wanted to say thank you for doing all that and looking into different options and really trying to think through of how does it play out with the actual building, with everything else. And even in that, so if we do approve these modular units, and I know we just now created a, what's this committee? The facilities committee. What does it look like? Or maybe we can still kind of figure that out, of more of ongoing conversation so that the facilities committee can continue to keep getting feedback from the community as this is being shaped and being formed to ensure that the Lions Farm, what this will look like in the future, will actually represent what that community is hoping for.
That, if you recall, that's one of the absolute reasons that I was wanting to move forward with committees like that, so we can be proactive. Obviously, facilities committee will be dealing with just the right sizing in general, but what do we look like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. And so that's the primary responsibility, one of the responsibilities of the facilities committee, to be proactive.
Ms. Katay?
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, and my question actually speaks to your response there, which is that given what you stated before about looking at other facilities to see if there were modular units that could be moved, I'm curious if we make the investment in these modular units for Lions Farm, if that could potentially be used elsewhere in the district. Just trying to think about, like, is this a one-time investment that will only ever benefit Lions Farm, or could another school that increases in enrollment potentially utilize these units at a later date?
So that's a great question. I can say that we have modulars at a variety of sites. They would certainly not go to waste, including our folks who manage and run our bus program. They are in extremely old modular units. So even our staff are in some significantly aging facilities related to modulars. In spite of the fact that we have school facilities that we could easily move older units out and put newer units in, so they would absolutely not go to waste.
Mr. Tab?
Thank you. I definitely understand that the need for us to move this forward. Right now, what are we doing to accommodate if new families in that area move in? Are we sending these new families somewhere else now, or are we continuously adding to the problem that's there? Maybe that's for Dr. Lewis.
Yes, we are continuing to enroll. As you recall, there was some public comment from some of our staff that we had to make some difficult decisions, as it relates to, their children attending that school to allow for families that move into that community.
So I'm concerned with the comment about, the classrooms being under the stairs, and we continuously adding, how we fixing the problem if we are adding and not sending them to actually to Parkwood or somewhere else.
That's what we said was twofold, the modular units and some boundary adjustments for that particular school. The modular units are by themselves over the next 10 years is not going to accommodate the growth that's in that area. So it'll be the modular units that will add 154 seats to that school. But we still need to make some boundary adjustments for the growth that's in that area. So modular units and boundary adjustments.
And so that's where I am. If we're looking at taking care of one problem, which is adding the units, and I don't want to get in trouble for calling them trailers like I did before, but that's when I was in school. This is still a trailer, but the modular units, right? But yet we still have the problem still at hand if we don't address both. And I'm trying to figure out, if we address one, how are we also addressing the other issue? Okay. And so that's where I would be is moving it forward, but also with the understanding that we are addressing what's at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, are there any other questions or comments?
Are we gonna refer this back to facilities also at the same time? Both ends?
We can, if that is the will of the
I
board.
guess I should make the motion.
Yes. Can you make a really beautiful motion for us?
A motion to approve the Lions Farm modular village and the conversation to move to facilities committee to discuss the boundaries and other ways to address overcrowding at Lions Farm.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Rogers, seconded by Ms. Burr, that we approve the Lions Farm Elementary Learning Village classroom expansion and move the conversation to Facilities Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. It's approved unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming in, us moving these things off of consent, having the conversations. We really appreciate your patience. And next on the agenda, I will take a motion to bring us into closed session.
I move to convene into closed session for the reasons stated in the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Nateef and seconded by Ms. Rivero to go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. It's approved unanimously. We will not be returning to the live stream after closed session. So thank you all very much. And we are now in closed session.